Hi, Louise.
Hi, Sarah.
How's it going?
It's good. We're about to have a weekend.
Yay. Always a good thing.
It's been a week.
Well, today we are discussing chapter 7 and 8 of The Baby Thief by Barbara Bisantz Raymond. Um, hmm. I wonder if there's a happy adoption book that we can read.
um,
Actually, I don't think so, but
I don't think so, but something with a little once in a while, some levity.
yes,
This is
yes.
sad. I'm
Can
just
we
sad.
redo The Mistress's Daughter?
Yeah, please. George's Memphis, and that's chapter 7, why she was allowed to come in and just be this person that took over was
Right. And this was because
perfect
of,
storm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Edward Crump, who
Yeah.
was I find it ironic, the crump, the
Yeah.
rhyming of current situation, because this guy was just utterly corrupt to the core, and that allowed
Yeah.
Georgia to. I mean, he just was beyond, and not
Mm-hmm.
unlike many cities in crises, when someone
Yeah.
comes along and makes things better, people
Yeah.
tend to have a blind eye towards what's really going on. And I think that was the case here.
Yeah. They had that quote. Memphis folks were all of a sudden proud to be from Memphis because the streets were paved and things were looking nicer and storefronts looked good. And he did all the main things, but he also did a poll tax
Mm-hmm.
and started making it and also separating out that, people of color were now not able to have. And of course, people in power don't care about that. So right away, making the rift between rich and poor distinct, which is where Georgia comes in, right?
Mm-hmm. And we
Just
know how
gross.
Georgia felt about how people without means.
That's right. She was just a user beyond. And I like it, the last part of that. I mean, we'll go to chapter 8. It's really the big chapter here. But it said something, um, everyone knew who to support, meaning Crump. A Memphis
Mm-hmm.
judge recalled decades later, it was always a Crump man, except when it was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
She was like the woman among the men. And
Mm-hmm.
she was very kind of harsh in that way too, where men listened to her when
Right.
women didn't have
Well,
voices.
probably she scared them, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, scares me.
Yeah. She's, you know,
Scary.
6 feet under and still scary.
She really is. Well, this is harsh, right, Sarah?
Yeah. Well,
Just this.
here's what it was interesting too, right in the first paragraph. It said when Georgia began her child placing career, almost no one adopted children.
Right.
So that it wasn't a prevalent thing. Also,
No,
and then she goes back into the history of like orphanages and
this is big. I thought that I didn't know a lot of this. I'm sure most people don't know a lot of this. We knew about orphan trains, but the
mhm.
little wanderers, she called the chapter,
Well,
gets
and the
into the
baby farms
yes, baby farms, and it gets into the whole history of adoption, even way back when, in Europe.
or the
And
history of
yeah, not
orphans, not
orphans.
adoption,
Yeah,
orphan
how
like
what they were
homeless children.
considered. Yeah,
Hmm.
homeless children and how society viewed them and how they viewed single mothers, unwed mothers.
Well, that I mean, think about that. The way society viewed unwed mothers
Recently,
carried all the way into the 20th century, perhaps still
I was going to
somewhat in the
say,
21st century in certain places.
I think so. I'm sure it's
Hmm.
still going on. Um, yeah, it was really hard to read because of the conditions of these children. It just
I mean, and
because
some of the descriptions about the
God,
winter, how they'd,
yes,
they'd find like a vent on the streets
yes,
with steam blowing up so that they could be warm and
and,
pile on top of each other. And
yeah, just pile on top of each other, and how people that took on these kids to work on farms and different things, even babies, just left them out to burn in the sun, and I mean horrible dehydration, malnutrition, abuse, sexual abuse. Some of the girls were entertainers in the early New York and big cities, they would go in and entertain businessmen as dancers and singers, and then possibly be raped. And they were as young as what, 8, 12. I mean, maybe younger. It was
way much younger.
disgusting.
I mean, and it goes, she went all the way back, even,
Yeah.
infanticide, and infanticide was in some places just super common, to kill your babies. And it took a long time to get to where children were considered children, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But back, even Aristotle and Plato endorsed killing babies.
Yes.
Like it really was like a compartmentalization of.
They were considered not at the same level as others if they were an orphan. So it's like you were defective, and in all societies across. And it's so strange to me because of who we are now, to ever consider that in a baby is beyond me. But
in fact, there, she talks about in 1793 there was an auctioning off of kids
yes,
in Massachusetts. I mean, they were just really
slaves.
chattel, exploited for their labor,
Yeah.
killed off when they weren't useful, left to,
Yeah.
neglected, left to starve, freeze. These practices were very, very common until finally, sometime in the late 19th century, early 20th century, when labor laws came into effect, when people started, this isn't cool, and started to play with their children. And
a 4-year-old made this product for me. I mean, someone actually said, I was horrified that a 4-year-old was manufacturing these products because they're little hands, right? Here's that quote about the mothers. I don't know why this just bothers me so much, but and also Charles Darwin's second cousin, Francis, that's kind of interesting, was involved in the whole eugenics situation here with procreating. I mean, it's just weird. The sterilization of people. Okay, he says, Americans were bearing more children than were cultured ones. I mean, that's disgusting. Some particularly prolific breeders were among those considered most abnormal, the single mothers. I mean, it's just, and then she says she couldn't find why they were called abnormal. She did her research and could not figure it out. And she said, probably just, she wondered if it was the abnormality was manifested in feeble-minded, intellect, depraved morals, but no, she just thinks it's because they were single mothers.
Right.
I mean, it's just weird.
It was a moral shortcoming in everybody's eyes.
Shortcoming, which made you actually defective and have issues, which made your children defective and have issues, when really it's just called unprotected sex.
Right. Human nature. I mean,
human nature, some of it's probably even rape and other things. So back in that day. Yeah.
Anyway, this just really urge you to read this, because it just goes deep into the history of how children, homeless children, children without parents were thought of, and then just the evolution into modern adoption.
Well, in the language, right? Ragamuffins, street urchins,
right?
All bastards, all of it is kind of what carries over into the adoption world. And do we want to tackle how Barbara, the author,
is an adopted
parent and started to grapple with some of this? Like,
yes.
Okay, wait, especially when she got into the Georgia Tan stuff. I mean, she started to be like, oh, she's seen how Georgia was the one who said blank slate. Let's make it popular. These children are blank slates. You have a beautiful home. I'm taking the best child and producing them for your family. I'm choosing the child, choosing the family, which is all a bunch of BS.
Of course.
But that's where the blank slate started.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think as she wrote this and started to uncover this, she's having her own moral reckoning about what is adoption? What does it mean personally?
Yeah, she had one child who wasn't adopted and one who was, and she
Hmm.
started to think, I've always treated them the same and made sure, but is my daughter thinking certain things? And she's very investigative in it, where how she comes to it, and she's honest about it. So, shout out for that.
Yeah, I did think, I don't know, remember where it was, but when it talked about those baby farms, that there was so some of them would get
Mm,
money either upfront or others would
yeah,
get payments, right? So you get a kid, a baby, child, and if they got all the money up front, they had no incentive to keep these children alive. So there was
yeah,
one place that 100% of the children died.
yeah.
100%. No one ever held accountable for any of
No,
it.
no. They just,
100%. That
yeah.
is just astounding. Um,
It makes me
and
want to go research even more, but then I don't want to know more. It's like,
Well, it's
you-
good to know. I
it's
mean,
good to
it's
know.
definitely, we rail on people about knowing our history
Yeah,
about adoption, as hard as it is, knowing is important.
it's very important how we got here. I mean, the
Hmm.
whole, I almost think this is the precursor to American Baby in some ways, right?
Yes. Yes.
We're sort of doing them flip-flop, but it's sort of the precursor to then the next era. But
Well,
we
this was
could,
because of our Patreons
that's
wanted us
right.
to read this book. Well, the majority of the people that voted wanted this
Yes.
book. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, then next week we're on to part 2 of the book.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
we're going through it quickly. I
okay,
am
I'm
glad
gonna.
to know. I am glad to read it actually.
Yeah, I think next week we will. It's it'll be. Sorry, everyone. I think we'll just be reading chapter 9 because it's a big one. So
Yeah.
when you're
So
reading along, read chapter 9 next week.
yes. And our guest coming up has a lot of
Oh,
really good stuff for adoptees out there. So
he is he's a hard worker,
yeah,
advocate, fighting the fight.
he is.
So
So we'll go to that.
we'll go
See
to
you
that.
soon.
See you in a minute.